Hello, boys and girls. You probably remember me as the British guy, the English boy, who read to you on Read Across America to all the students in third grade from Ms. Anderson. And I know that you're all at home now trying to do homework. I hope you're all doing that. But I just wanted to have the opportunity to do some readings like I do when I come over to the school, which of course I can't do now. So I thought I'd try to do it like this, and hopefully some of you will be able to pick this up and read it. Miss Anderson said she'd send it out on Fun Friday. So again, I'm Neil, Scott-Barbour, and I'm the guy who comes from across the Atlantic Ocean, which essentially we call the pond, just for fun. And what I'm going to do today is read some books that hopefully you will enjoy. The first is called The Woodland Elves, and it comes from a really good friend of ours up in Marion, Ohio, Sherry Williamson. She writes these books about the elves, and I'm going to explain a little bit about the background of her house. I'll read the piece that starts it out. You'll find the true story of how one family came to know and love an entire community of elves living in a forest near the family treehouse. There was something about life in the treehouse that made the children want to stay there as long as possible. Anything could happen there on beautiful moonlit nights or clear sunshiny days, and it often does. And there's a whole trail up there next to this lady's house, which she did originally for her grandchildren. And Avery has actually been there herself. She walked through the trail and she's looked at all the houses that are built there and little elf houses. And there are, I think, now 4 books, the 4th one just about to come out. So I'm going to start by reading this story for you and showing you the pictures as well. This is going to be fun. So the introduction, and you see a little elf down there. Going to read the introduction. The elves quickly spread the news throughout the forest. Did you hear? Did you hear? The boys have arrived. Those were the grandchildren of the person who writes this. The forest was alive with magical energy that day. A rustle in the leaves, a blur of motion. Was it a bird or a deer or something else? Grandmother knew. She met the elves when she was young, discovered the secret life that existed in the woods, and throughout the years remained friends with its hidden inhabitants. It was for her grandchildren that she had a magnificent tree house built at the edge of a forest. A little brook flowed gently past it, carrying an assortment of fish, frogs, and turtles. This indeed was the perfect place to discover what or who lived within the woods. Welcome to the world of the woodland elves. Within these pages, you will find the true story of how one family came to know and love an entire community of elves living in a forest. Anything could happen there. Grandmother felt her grandchildren were old enough now to learn the secrets of the forest. She was in high hopes that the elves would return while her grandchildren were visiting for that summer a couple of years ago, and they did. And here you see a picture of a tree house. You see that? And you see an elf in there as well. Beautiful paintings or drawings that have been done. Chapter 1. I'm going to show you the picture first, and then I'll read this particular portion. It's called A Fall from the Crow's Nest. Grandmother had one rule about the treehouse: no going higher than the crow's nest. Of course, the crow's nest was Fritz, Buddy, and Chip's favorite spot, as it was the highest point in the treehouse. One day, Fritz, the oldest of the 3 grandsons, and a consummate daredevil, decided to climb out of the crow's nest and just keep on going as high as the tree would allow. He knew there would surely be a consequence for his actions at the end of the day, but at that moment he simply didn't care. Adventure beckoned. Up he went, step by step, branch by branch, making sure each rung in his woodland ladder was strong and sturdy. See there again, you can see him climbing up. See that? One weak branch could have caused him to find the ground much faster and sooner than he would have hoped. The climb made him feel like king of the forest. Finally, he reached the very top of the old tree. The entire world spread below him, and the view was spectacular. Fritz felt like he could touch the clouds. In fact, he felt like he was in the clouds, the trees, the breeze, all of it. And here he is at the top, looking out. Every detail of the woods looked brand new. The busy insects, the chirping birds, and the unusually active squirrels. Sitting high in his woodland throne, Fritz enjoyed the excitement of the world beneath him. Then a rather curious thing happened. He saw his first woodland elf. His first woodland elf. Actually, he saw hundreds of them. There were so many of them, and they were moving out of the woods in such an organized manner that at first he thought they were creatures of the insect world. Fritz stared, remaining absolutely motionless, afraid to move for fear the tiny elves would hear him and disappear into the woods. Rather quickly, however, another unexpected event occurred. The branch Fritz was sitting on began to split, and with a loud crack snapped in half. See what's happening there? Fritz flailed, taking hold of anything he could, but nothing was strong enough to keep him safe in the treetop. He tumbled down branch after branch, grabbing twigs and bugs and just about everything else on his way, to no avail. Leaves scattered down everywhere as he fell to the ground. Thump! Fritz landed on the soft ground below, slightly shaken and out of breath, but otherwise fine. As he looked himself over to make sure nothing was broken or too badly bruised, he suddenly became aware of hundreds of little eyes staring at him in amazement. His fall was completely forgotten. He could hardly believe his good fortune. He had landed right smack in the middle of an entire community of elves. He wanted to let the elves know that he would do them no harm, but having never met an elf before, he had no idea what to say or do. Fritz and the elves simply stared at each other. You can see them staring at each other. He suspected the elves' first thought was to run away as quickly as they could, but they did not. Their lack of fear surprised him, and he smiled, happy with their innocent trust of him. Then, overcome with the amazement of this unbelievable situation, he laughed. Fritz's surprising calmness and joy must have made all the difference. The elves cautiously approached him and took stock of his needs. One elf began picking leaves out of his hair, while others attended to his minor cuts and scrapes. Suddenly, he found himself surrounded by small, happy beings, all intent on caring for him and making sure he was all right. More and more elves came out of the woods. Oh my goodness gracious, look at this. Look at this. See, they're all coming out of the woods, and he's sitting there and watching them. They're all coming out. Lots of different elves Amazing little elves. What at first appeared to be an interesting green leaf sprouting from a branch suddenly stood up, revealing many small elfin friends behind him. A rustle in the grass produced many more tiny people scurrying in his direction. All around him Fritz could hear the pitter-patter of hundreds of little footsteps as the woods patrol came out in full force to greet him and form a protective barrier around him. That's what they're doing, a barrier around him so that he was safe. Even Coco, grandmother's cat, had been enlisted to help bring necessary medical supplies in a cart. "Are you okay?" a small voice suddenly asked. "Sure, I'm Fritz started to say, when it occurred to him that a woodland elf had just spoken to him. He stopped and wonderingly stared at the little creature. "I'm Tanglewood," the small elf said in a proud and bold little voice, climbing up on Fritz's lap. "This is Barley Crumb," he continued, pointing to the elf that suddenly landed on Fritz's shoulder. "And this is Bean Pod," Tanglewood finished, pointing to the smallest elf who had emerged from a hole in the tree. Here you can see each of those elves as we just talked about. In his amazement, Fritz forgot his manners completely. The thought of a polite, "Nice to meet you, how do you do," never entered his mind. Instead, he simply whispered, "Who are you?" Tanglewood laughed. "We are the little people who live in the woods," he said. "We rarely reveal ourselves to humans. Grandmother is one of the few humans who knows about our existence." Wait a minute, Fritz thought. Grandmother knows the elves? Almost as if reading his thoughts, Tanglewood went on. "Many, many years ago, Grandmother noticed thousands of tiny lights moving amongst the trees in our woods, and suspected we were much more than fireflies. She seemed to share our magical spirit, and in time we chose to make ourselves visible to her." And here is Grandma looking out and seeing all the sparkly little lights. "We have spent many years together in our curious world out here. Her family has become our family. When we saw you tumble from the treetop," he continued, "well, we just had to make sure you were all right. Grandmother would never have forgiven us if we had let anything bad happen to you." Fritz stayed out in the woods with his new elfin friends that night, listening with boundless curiosity to their many tales of the past. The night lasted a long, long time. Time seemed to exist differently in the elf world. Eventually the glowing sun peeked out from the east, and the first rays of dawn streaked the sky. With no warning, the elves vanished mysteriously into the woods. Long after the elves left, Fritz sat beside the little brook in the woods, watching the water trickle down over the rocks. Leaves in the branches above him rustled with what he knew was not wind, but elf activity. Even though he could no longer see the elves, he knew they were there, After a while, the gentle sounds of the swaying branches and gurgling water rocked him to sleep. The following evening, Fritz included his brothers, Buddy and Chip, in his nighttime elfin adventures, with the elves' permission, of course. Grandmother allowed and even encouraged the boys to sleep out in the treehouse whenever they wanted. As a result, they spent nearly every night alongside their small friends in the woods that they named the One and Only. To them it was an enchanted forest, as nightly hundreds of tiny people, now their friends, emerged to take over the treetops, meadows, and babbling waters. As the summer went on, the boys' friendship with Tanglewood, Barleycrumb, and Beanpod grew into a bond that very few humans experience in a lifetime. See, they are in the treehouse. So I think what we'll do is a second installment of that another time, and I will go on to read some different things for you with some of my special voices. One of my all-time favourite books is by Shel Silverstein. He's got lots of different books, of course, and a guy called Jack Prolutsky, who does similar things as well. So the first one I want to do, which I don't think I've done for you at school, is about a little girl who doesn't want to go to school. This might be one of you at some point. It's called Sick, and here's her story. Here she is. She's in bed. You can see the bed at the bottom. She doesn't feel well, and this is what she says.
I cannot go to school today,
said little Peggy Ann McKay.
I have the measles and the mumps, a gash, a rash, and purple bumps. My mouth is wet, my throat is dry. I'm going blind in my right eye. My tonsils are as big as rocks. I've counted 16 chicken pox, and there's one more. That's 17. And don't you think my face looks green? My leg is cut, my eyes are blue. It might be instamatic flu. I cough and sneeze and gasp and choke. I'm sure that my left leg is broke. My hip hurts when I move my chin. My belly button's caving in. My back is wrenched, my ankle's sprained. My appendix pains each time it rains. My nose is cold, my toes are numb. I have a sliver in my thumb. My neck is stiff, my voice is weak. I hardly whisper when I speak. My tongue is filling up my mouth. I think my hair is falling out. My elbow's bent, my spine ain't straight. My temperature is 108. My brain is shrunk. I cannot hear. There is a hole inside my ear. I have a hangnail and my heart is... What? What's that? What's that you say? Today is Saturday. Goodbye, I'm going out to play.
That's one of my favourites. And now we have another silly one. I should have told you that Shel does silly stories. This one is called The Farmer and the Queen. The Farmer and the Queen. And there's a lot of animals in this one. Here's the farmer, and here's the animals that soon will talk to you. Oh, she's coming, the farmer said to the owl. Oh, what shall I do? Shall I bow when she comes? Shall I twiddle my thumbs? The owl asked. Who? The queen, the royal queen, she'll pass the farm today. Shall I salute? He asked the horse. The horse said, nay. Shall I give her a gift? He asked the wren. A lovely memento for her to keep. An egg or a peach or an ear of corn. The wren said, cheep, 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 cheep. But should I curtsy or should I cheer? Oh, here's her carriage now. What should I do? He asked the dog. The dog said, bow, bow, bow. And so he did, and so she passed. Oh, tra-la-la-la-la-la. Oh, she smiled, she did. He told the sheep. The sheep said, "Bah, bah, bah." Those are a couple of my favourites, and let's move on to some other ones that I've got. I read a lot of these at, or used to, at assisted livings for older folks. They like these too. But of course, right now with the thing going around, you know, the COVID virus, sorry. I am going to read now a different one. This is called No Difference. It's a kind of an inspirational thing. It's not really funny, but you might like it. Small as a peanut, big as a giant, we're all the same size when we turn off the light. Rich as a sultan, poor as a mite, we're all worth the same when we turn off the light. Red, black or orange, yellow or white, we all look the same when we turn off the light. So maybe the way to make everything right is for God to just reach out and turn off the light. All right, and the next one we're going to do is right here. I have more color coded, as you see. This is a little boy, and you'll be the judge. He thought he was very smart. I don't know. You'll have to be the one.
My dad gave me a $1 bill 'cause I'm his smartest son.
And I swapped it for 2 shiny quarters 'cause 2 is more than 1. And then I took the quarters and traded them to Lou for 3 dimes. I guess he don't know that 3 is more than 2. Just then along came old Blind Bates, and just 'cause he can't see, he gave me 4 nickels for my 3 dimes, and 4 is more than 3. And I took the nickels to Hiram Coombs down at the seed feed store, and the fool gave me 5 pennies for them, and 5 is more than 4. And then I went and showed my dad. He got red in the cheeks, closed his eyes and shook his head, too proud of me to speak.
Here's a short one about pancakes, of which there is a whole stack there. You might not be able to get a stack as big as that at IHOP. Pancake.
Who wants a pancake, sweet and piping hot? Good little Grace looks up and says, I'll take the one on top. Who else wants a pancake, fresh off the griddle? Terrible Teresa smiles and says, Oh, I'll take the one in the middle.
Here's another one. This is also about food. It's about spaghetti. I bet you all like spaghetti, don't you? Well, here's a picture of, well, we'll see. I'll show you the picture at the end and you'll get it. Spaghetti, spaghetti all over the place, up to my elbows, up to my face, over the carpet and under the chairs, into the hammock and wound round the stairs, filling the bathtub and covering the desk, making the sofa a mad, mushy mess. The party is ruined. I'm terribly worried. The guests have all left, unless they're all buried. I told them, bring presents. I said, throw confetti. I guess they heard wrong, 'cause they all threw spaghetti. And I'm buried underneath it. Oh my gosh. Now I'm going to turn to a couple of stories by Jack Prolutsky. The first one, in some ways a little bit like Sick, the little girl, but it's just a complaining little boy that says, I should have stayed in bed today. I should have stayed in bed today. In bed's where I belong. As soon as I got up today, things started going wrong. I got a splinter in my foot. My puppy made me fall. I squirted
toothpaste in my ear. I crashed into the wall. I knocked my homework off the desk. It landed on my toes. I spilled a glass of chocolate milk. It's soaking through my clothes. I accidentally bit my tongue. That really made me moan. And it was far from funny when I banged my funny bone. I scraped my knees, I bumped my nose, I sat upon a pin. I leapt up with alacrity and sharply barked my shin. I stuck a finger in my eye. The pain is quite severe. I better get right back to bed and stay there for a year. Here I am, falling over the dog. The dog got in the way.
All right, let's see what else we've got here. All right, let's do a different one here. This is called Today I'm Going Yesterday. It's kind of a funny little strange thing. And here's the little boy. He's sort of walking backwards. A little bit weird, I know. But this is what he says.
Today I'm going yesterday as quickly as I can. I'm confident I'll do it. I've devised a clever plan. It involves my running backward at a constant rate of speed. If I'm mindful of my timing, I'll undoubtedly succeed. Today I'm going back yesterday. I'm moving very fast as I'm putting off the future for the rather recent past. I can feel the present fading as I hastily depart and look forward to arriving on the day before I start. Today I'm going yesterday, I'm slipping out of sight and anticipate I'll vanish just a bit before tonight. When I reach my destination, I'll compose a note to say that I'll see you all tomorrow, which of course will be today.
And to end with another of my real favourites called Captain Conniption. And here is Captain Conniption. Here's Captain Conniption. As you can see, he's a pirate. I'm Captain Conniption, the scourge of the sea. No pirate alive is as fearsome as me. I'm 10 times as tough as the skin of a whale. The sharks cringe in terror wherever I sail. I'm Captain Conniption, the bane of the fleet. I don't wash my face, and I don't wash my feet. I wear a black hat, and I fly a black flag. I'm as bad as can be, although I don't like to brag. When I'm on the deck with my cutlass in hand, the saltiest sailors start sailing for land. They know I'm the nastiest nautical knave, and bold as a brigand is bound to behave. I'm Captain Conniption, and up to no good. You'll soon walk the plank, if I think that you should. I'll show you right now how I vanquish a foe.
But I hear my mother calling, so I have to go. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Hope you enjoyed this. Bye-bye.